Hey everyone! Today, we're going to break down one of the most pivotal events in modern history, the American Revolution. We're going to look at the ideas that kicked it all off, the war that defined it, and the new nation that was born from it. Let's dive right in.
One of the key figures of the era, John Adams, he really hit the nail on the head with this one. He said the real revolution happened before the war even started. It was a revolution in the way people thought. Before a single shot was fired, the colonists were already starting to see themselves in a new light, not as British subjects, but as a people who deserved to rule themselves.
So that's the big question, right? How did this massive mental shift actually happen? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was more like a slow burn of ideas, frustrations, and principles that eventually just caught fire.
All right, so to really get what happened, we need to rewind a bit, back to the end of a huge conflict called the French and Indian War. It was right after this war that the whole relationship between Britain and its American colonies started to change, and not for the better. See, for a long time, Britain pretty much had a hands-off approach, leaving the colonies to mostly govern themselves. But the French and Indian War, which wrapped up in 1763, was unbelievably expensive. So, to pay off its huge war debt and to manage this newly expanded empire, Britain decided it was time for the colonies to start paying up and for London to take tighter control. And what's so wild is just how fast this all happened, one after another. First the Sugar Act, then the really unpopular Stamp Act, which taxed pretty much every piece of paper you could think of, from legal papers to, get this, playing cards. Then came the Townshend Acts. To the colonists, this felt less like fair policy and more like a full-on economic assault, a barrage of taxes from a government thousands of miles away.
And this right here, this is the heart of the whole problem. It wasn't just about the money, It was about a huge fundamental principle. The colonists' whole argument was, hey, we're English subjects. You can't tax us if we don't have a voice in your parliament. Since they didn't elect anyone to represent them in London, they believed Parliament had zero right to take their money.
So as you can imagine, this big disagreement over ideas, it didn't just stay in books and debates for long. Things escalated, and they escalated fast, moving from protest right into open rebellion.
And you can see this really dangerous cycle starting to form here. Britain slaps on a new tax, the colonists protest, and sometimes it gets violent. So Britain sends in soldiers to crack down, which, of course, just makes everyone even angrier and starts pushing these separate, individual colonies to finally work together against one common enemy.
And here are the moments where things really boiled over. The Boston Massacre, that's where tensions just exploded into actual bloodshed. Then you have the Boston Tea Party, this incredible dramatic act of defiance. And Britain's response? They came down hard with what the colonists called the Intolerable Acts, shutting down Boston's port and basically ending self-government in Massachusetts. That was the last straw. It pushed the colonies to form the First Continental Congress and create a united front.
Okay, so by the time the Second Continental Congress got together in 1775, actual fighting had already kicked off. So they make this massive decision. They're forming a real army, the Continental Army. And in a brilliant political move, they pick a Virginian, George Washington, to lead it. This helped unite the southern colonies with the rebellion that had started up in New England. This was the moment scattered militias became an army for a new nation.
And then, in early 1776, this little pamphlet called Common Sense just takes the colonies by storm. Thomas Paine's writing was electric. He used simple, powerful language to argue against the whole idea of a king and for total independence. He was telling people, hey, this isn't just about taxes anymore. We have a chance to build a whole new world.
And with all that energy in the air, Congress takes the final leap. There's no turning back now. The Declaration of Independence, written mostly by Thomas Jefferson, wasn't just a list of complaints. It put forward this radical idea that all men are created equal with basic rights. It officially cut all ties with Britain. The break was final.
Okay, so declaring independence is one thing, but actually winning it on the battlefield against the biggest military superpower on the planet, that's a whole different ballgame. And that brings us to the war itself.
So the war drags on for 8 incredibly long years, and for a lot of that time, things did not look good for the Americans. The huge turning point came with the American victory at Saratoga. That win convinced France to jump in and officially become an ally, and that was a game changer. They provided money, soldiers, and, most importantly, a navy. That support was absolutely crucial in 1781 at the Battle of Yorktown, where American and French forces trapped the main British army and forced them to surrender.
So you have to ask, how in the world did this underdog victory even happen?
I mean, the Continental Army was this scrappy, ragtag force. They were often starving and barely had supplies. But what they had was a powerful cause they believed in. They knew the land, and they had the incredible leadership of George Washington. The British, on the other hand, yeah, they were the best of the best, but they were fighting thousands of miles from home with huge supply problems in a country where the people were increasingly against them.
So the victory at Yorktown pretty much ends the fighting, but the revolution's job wasn't done yet. Now came the really hard part, securing the peace and actually building a new country from scratch.
And that brings us to 1783 with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. This was the official piece of paper that sealed the deal. In it, Great Britain had to formally recognize the independence of the United States. It was finally officially over.
And the fallout from this was massive, truly world-changing. First, obviously, the United States is now its own country. But it also launched this brand new experiment in government, a large federal republic, built on the idea that the government gets its power from the people. And that idea, it spread like wildfire, inspiring revolutions all over the globe, from France to Latin America. And to lock in their own future, the new nation created the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the bedrock documents that still guide the country today.
So I want to leave you with this to chew on. How did this fight over taxes and ideas from, 2.5 centuries ago end up shaping the world we live in today? The ideals of liberty, equality, and self-government that fueled this revolution are still echoing around the planet. They've inspired so many movements for freedom and democracy. It just goes to show you, a revolution that starts in the minds and hearts of the people really can change everything.